Thank you for passing the baton. That felt like a track race. So let me go ahead and share my slides. I think everyone should be able to see this. Does everyone see a blank screen? I'm going to assume yes. Okay. The assumption is everyone can see a blank screen. Well, thank you very much, JS Poland. First of all, thank you very much for having me, Darius, Derek, and everyone there. So let's get going because I do not have a lot of time. 20 minutes is pretty good, but I'll try to pack all this information in the allotted space. So if for anyone who knows me, every morning I like to greet the Dom because it is 10 a.m. here in Toronto, Canada. So good morning, Dom. But since I am in Warsaw, the Warsaw room in Poland, first of all, since it is the afternoon for you, I'm going to say good afternoon, Dom. But since I am in Poland, I'm going to say dzień dobry, Dom. I hope I said that correctly. If I didn't, I have to apologize. I'm not the best with languages. Regardless, hello, my name's Henri. That's a French name. If you can pronounce it, it's Henri, just like that. Henri Helvetica is my Twitter handle. It's my Instagram handle, but it's not my real last name, but it's one that's memorable. I'm from Toronto, Canada. That's the airport code. And I like to distance run. So I like to share my runs online at #devswhorun if you're somewhat curious, I'd say. So welcome quickly to this presentation called Moving Pictures. It's a snapshot into the future of web media. I'm kind of an image fan. So we're going to kind of go through that. My slides are actually online. So if you want to go to, you'll see at the bottom left, you'll see bit.ly/movingpictures_JS Poland. You can look at them right now. It's a PDF. If you want to download them and follow along, go right ahead. So let's get going. I'm a bit of a storyteller, and this talk is really a story. 2020 has been a fantastic year for images online. The technology that's gone into and the research that gone into perfecting the perfect web image has been really culminating into this great moment this year, and we're going to really cover that. So this story really starts on the internet, of course. Really, though, it started in 1993 in February at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications in Illinois, in the USA, and this is essentially where Mosaic, the browser, was conceived. Now, some of you may or may not remember, but last week or the week before was the 25th anniversary of Mosaic 1.0. But in an exchange in emails, there was one that's read just like this. I'd like to propose a new optional HTML tag, IMG. That was from the Mark Andreessen, Thursday, February 25th, 1993, and that's the actual timestamp. Now, we're here talking about images. Now, close your eyes for a hot second and try to imagine the internet, the web, without images. It's nearly impossible. Think of not having Instagram, which, by the way, last month turned 10. Can you believe that? But pictures are there to really describe everything. They're actually a perfect portal for storytelling. You're able to share the thrill of victory. By the way, that 4x4 Polish team, they are fantastic. I've seen them run on TV. Amazing. But you can also, and by the way, that is Sophia Henri, who's also a fantastic 1500-meter runner. I've watched her a bunch of times on TV. Awesome. But again, we're able to share the thrill of victory and also a bit of the agony of defeat through pictures. Pictures are essentially very important. Now, the funny thing is that during this email exchange back and forth about introducing the image tag, there was actually some fear that there might be some what we'll call unsavory content to populate the web. But the one thing that held true, and that was the belief that the web, pictures on the web, images on the web would promote experimentation. That was very important, and they believed that this would be the outcome, and indeed it was. So they moved on with the image tag and adding images to the web. Now, eventually, the image tag was introduced officially on HTML for HTML 2.0, which is RFC 1866, and I'm going to talk about that a little later, and that was in 1995. Now, it would be impossible to talk about the future of web images without actually going through a retrospective. So we're going to do that quickly right now to sort of put you in the mood. Let's start with the graphic interchange format, the one that we know as, some call it the GIF, some call it the GIF, but whatever it is, it's the one that we know very well. Now, it's lossless. It has some transparency, not an alpha channel, 256 colors, obviously very well known for animations, and it's about 33 years old, so it's a little old. After that, we have the portable network graphic, or the PNG for short. Now, here again, we have a lossless format. PNG 8 is one you'll mostly find out there on the web. PNG 24, obviously very available as well. Here we had an alpha channel, which is essentially a gradient, the possibility of a gradient transparency. There was some animation available with the PNG, but I would not recommend it. But the PNG as well, about almost 25 years old. In fact, they had an anniversary October 1st. Now, let's talk about the workhorse of photography of images on the web, which is the Joint Photographic Experts Group, or what we know as the Jpeg. Now, this is where we introduced the lossy format, which is why it was so popular and so friendly to the web, so we can get the images down the wire. Best for photography, obviously. In certain cases, you can get an alpha channel depending on the variant of the JPEG, so the JPEG 2000, the JPEG XR. A true workhorse. A lot of images, the majority of images, in fact, on the web are JPEGs. It is the predominant format, and this also had an anniversary mid-September, and this format is 28 years old. And finally, I'm going to talk about the Scalable Vector Graphic, or the SVG. I put a little asterisk there simply because, you know what, it's not a bitmap format. It is a vector, but I'm going to throw it in the in the bunch. It's really text, so it compresses well, but it's also very scalable. You know, you're not going to get any degradation when you sort of increase its size and whatnot. But again, you know, this is a format that's almost 20 years old. So at the end of the day, all these formats, they're about as old as the Rolling Stones. In fact, if you start to tally up their age altogether, the SVG, PNG, the JPEG, and the GIF altogether are 104 years old. So it means a bunch of things. They're a little older. The codecs are a little older, but you know, we have all the tooling in the world. We're very accustomed to these formats. But that brought some concerns, and the concerns are the following. The codecs, like I said, they're a little older, and at this point, we need more efficient codecs. Congestion and costs. So let's take a look at these. I'm going to start by reading this quote. The foundation of the whole internet is data compression. That's by Colt McCandless at Google. Nothing happens on the internet without compression. And if it does, that's a bad move. Here's another quote. Image compression is critical to digital photography. Absolutely. Without it, a 12 megapixel image, would take 36 megabytes of storage, making most websites prohibitively large. And that is a quote by Google AI. I'll provide the link. This is an image that I like to kind of bandy around because it speaks volumes. There is a importance around, or at least correlation between compression and image quality, and you're trying to maximize both. You go too hard, you get stuff like this. If you go too little, you get images that are a little too big. So that is, in fact, the challenge. So bandwidth. How important is bandwidth today? Well, bandwidth has always been important, especially in the fact since we are more or less in a mobile world. But bandwidth has never been more important than this year. The pandemic has exposed so many things around the internet, around transmission of resources. COVID-19 has really shown that the internet, the web, bandwidth is absolutely at a premium. So today we work from home, we learn from home, and like we are doing today, we're conferencing from home. Even though I'm not going to talk about video in this case, but this was something that many people remember from early on in the pandemic period, where YouTube, Netflix, and a few other companies that do streaming were asked by governments to basically throttle the bandwidth, lower the resolution, because they feared that there would be some bandwidth challenges, and there have been. But luckily, they all cooperated. So, for example, Netflix, in this quote, they said they immediately developed and tested and rolled out something that was 25%. Something that provided 25% in savings, so that some of the top countries that were affected by the pandemic, like Italy and Spain, were able to manage. Now, here's another quote here from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, where they saw massive increases in internet traffic. Now, if we look at some of the data that, say, a company like Fastly provided, here you can see the layout of, in this chart, the internet traffic delta and what was taking place between, I think it was a 6-week period in March, starting in March through mid-April. So we saw immediate changes in traffic and behavior, and people needed the net. So this is why we need to make sure that, well, at least I'll talk about this part right here. Patent and royalties is another challenge when dealing with images. Would you believe that there are some great technologies out there that never really see light of day because of patent issues, royalty issues, or disputes? So, for example, HEIF. Some of you may remember that HEIF was a format that was being rolled out by Apple, but really never came out into the wild in browsers and whatnot due to patent issues. In fact, the GIF or GIF, whatever you want to call it, had also suffered from a patent issue, and it's the reason why the PNG in some cases was in fact introduced. Now let's get back to the web. Let's talk about images again. If we look at this is a chart from the HTTP archive, by the way, the Web Almanac that they'll be releasing next month. If you look at the bytes per page at P75, so the 75th percentile, you have about 2.4 megabytes. It jumps to about 5 once you get to the P90. And if we start to split that up per format, you can see that here in the blue, the JPEG is always by far the most prevalent format. And then you can see little smatterings of some of the other formats in Webp, etc. And again, this is important because we are in a mobile world. And here I took a look at some of the data from Poland. 3/4 of the traffic, internet traffic, is on mobile in Poland. So these are things that you want to keep in mind. So for that reason, we need high-performing images. So let's go through them. First, the JPEG, the PNG, the Webp, the GIF. Again, as a reminder, they're 104 years old. So seeing that the JPEG here is the most prevalent format, it's probably going to also provide the most savings. So the future is going to look like this. Let's talk about the JPEG XL. You may or may not have heard of it. It's starting to make its way into some tooling, but let's talk about it. So how this came about is because there was a call for paper about 2 to 3 years ago. 7 submissions were made. 2 were selected. 1 from PIC, 1 from FWEEF. PIC was a Google format that they were looking to roll out or research in replacing the JPEG, and FWEEF was from Cloudinary, which stood for Free Universal Image Format. Now, this is what they plan to have for the JPEG XL. Alpha channel, it's going to be lossless. It's going to have some animation, modern compression, obviously, high bit depth, legacy friendly, universal, and responsive. All things that are very important in an image format. The most important thing, royalty free. Now, the JPEG XL is close to being in its final stage, as in there might be a bit freeze soon, but just so you know, it is being thrown in some tooling as we speak, and Cloudinary right now supports it as a CDN. You'll be able to use the JPEG XL when time is near to roll out. I'm also going to talk about this Avif. You may or may not have heard of this, but Avif it comes from AV1, which is a video format, but Avif is essentially a still frame of the AV1. And this was designed by the Alliance for Open Media, a conglomerate of companies that essentially got together to create a royalty-free format. Now, what are the characteristics of the Avif? Again, like I said, it's the still image format of the AV1. It's going to have 8, 10, and 12 bits, lossy and lossless, alpha channel, HDR, chroma subsampling will be able you'll be able to have it at 420, 422, and 444. You can dig a little deeper around that, but 420 is mostly what you'll see on the web right now. But 422 and 444 give you greater, I'll say, fidelity. And again, a key here is that it's going to be royalty free. And here is some quick data that you'll be able to take a look at. By the way, my slides are at the bottom left, as you can tell, so you can download them, whatever. But this is to show you that the Avif is providing right now, amongst all the image formats, the best compression and savings and data savings. And this is here comparing it to Webp, Jpeg 2000, HEIF or HEIC, and Avif. Now, Avif support right now is in about 70% of browsers, in the sense that between Chrome, Opera, and it's behind a flag on Firefox, you could actually get some good support for this format. Now, I did mention it is behind a flag in Firefox. So what happens here is that you'll have to go to About Config, turn it on, yada, 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 and it looks a little something like this. All right, but you'll be able to see that in the slides. Now, finally, we have the Webp. Now, the Webp is actually 10 years old. A lot of people don't realize that. Webp turned 10 actually in October. Webp came out, had an aggressive codec, provided some animation, lossy and lossless. It was essentially made for the web. It had 8-bit depth transparency, 420 chroma subsampling, and believe it or not, it was essentially believed that, originally believed that it was going to replace the PNG. Who knows? But again, Webp support right now, fantastic. You can see across the board here, we have fantastic support. And the best part, it's supported by Safari. Now, Safari made the announcement midsummer, and essentially this has been rolled out in big stir. So if you're on Safari 14 and newer, you should be able to get some Webp support. Here's a quick little joke. 2016, Webp actually was supported by Safari in some testing, and apparently it was a mistake and it was pulled right back out. Something to remember. You can see here Shopify made some immediate moves last year when they had done some testing with Webp and decided to roll it out. And Cornel Lazinski, a fantastic image engineer, mentioned that in 2021, there's actually an argument to be made to potentially only serve Webp because you'll have support across the board. So essentially, web performance really, you can't take, how could I put it? Webp is essentially part of web performance at this point. Bad joke. So let's talk about tooling real quickly. Something that you'll be able to hear about in the coming weeks, as I believe there might be an announcement. Whoosh app, a online image compression tool, has Webp support, has Avif support, and I believe they've been playing around with Jpeg XL support. GIMP, Photoshop plugin, I believe Google had created one for the Webp at some time in the last couple of years. You'll be able to find it in the shop, I believe. You also have CDNs. CDNs will for sure give you some Webp. They've been doing that for a little while. Some are starting to potentially roll out some Avif, and the JPEG XL thing, I'm not too sure yet, but we're still in the early days of that format. So let's talk about the future. Believe it or not, Webp 2.0 is being worked on and developed as we speak. So is AV2. But Webp 2.0, you could actually go and fiddle around with that right now. It's a bit of an experiment, so if your computer blows up, you heard it from me, watch out. But this is going to address a lot of things, like the fact that it's going to be 30% better compression than the current Webp, very close to Avif, and a few other items there. Now, in conclusion, we have modern formats that you can use today. We have the tooling that you can use today, and we also have great fallbacks that you can use today as well. The services are available, so try to be mindful of all the data that you're sending down the wire. Here's a quick PSA that I want to make. In October, I had a images event where I had a lot of experts come in and talk about the formats and what they're doing and how they're using them. I'm going to release the videos next week, Tuesday on the 24th, so look out for that on my Twitter. Merci, and thank you for having me.